Mr. Russell Hornsby, thank you so much for speaking to me. I do want to say right off the bat, I love what you're doing, but I'm upset with Charles. So upset.
Understood. Hold on, we can't, it went off again.
Goodness, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, yeah.
So sorry. So before we get into the big main question, I want to take it back for a moment. There have been little fractures within the marriage a little bit. And one of the big mainstays that stayed with me was scene when Lucille is basically asking for prayers. And she gives that speech about, I've stood behind you. Why won't you stand for me? You don't touch her. You don't hold her hand. And she's in that moment just alone. Can you talk to me about the mindset of Charles? And is this in his mind? He's like, I'm separating myself from Lucille, or is it something bigger?
You know what? I think that we have to examine where men were in the 80s and in the 90s, and I think that we're looking at the 80s and 90s from a 2023 lens and perspective. Men didn't understand and know what that looked like when we're talking about support. When we're, you know what I mean, and especially I think men of the kind of ilk of Charles. Do you know what I'm saying? I think that in theory, like, hey, standing by and protect your woman is providing, putting a roof over your head, making sure the lights on, that kind of thing. But like being able to say, hey, I'm standing up here with you in church, and hey, baby, I got your back. I don't think that men had that language yet in that time. So I think Charles is kind of saying to himself, this is your fight. Hey, do it. You're bad. You're strong. You can do it. You know what I mean? And I think they would go home, and I think, I don't even think they may even talk about it, or he may have even asked, like, what'd you do that for? Why did you embarrass us in church? What's your problem? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? So I think, like, so we got to think about where we are in the world in 1980, 88, 89, 90, where that hadn't started to come until the late 90s, early 2000s, when women are encouraging their men, and men are saying, hey, man, we got to stand by our women. We got to protect our sisters. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's new rhetoric now in the last 10 to 15 years. So I think that's just an honest depiction of what I think would happen at that time.
Was it an emasculation by not necessarily consulting with you, having you take that lead in terms of standing up for your family? Because even though you had a different, you came to a different decision about too, as in turning your back.
I missed that part. I'm sorry. I came to a different decision. What?
In terms of, I'm going to turn my back kind of from my kids because, they decided they wanted to go harm the streets instead of being helpful towards it. So was it that complete opposite in the way how you guys were thinking, that you viewed it as an emasculation, that she would take it such a lead in standing up in a church like that?
100%. 100%. I think I can say that. I don't know if he was saying that then, that he felt, I don't think he would know how he felt in that moment. I just think he felt more, I think he would say, I felt betrayed, not necessarily emasculated. Again, I think that that's a new word that we use today. You know what I mean? I think then he would have said, my wife betrayed me. You're supposed to be standing by your man. And especially, you know what I mean? So I think a sense of betrayal would have been the more proper word to use.
What was Charles really trying to accomplish with Sister Riley? Was he reaching out for conversation, or was there a hope for more, or was it to purposely get Lucille jealous?
No, I think it's simply reaching out for conversation. You know what I mean? Again, that's the infidelity we see with Charles and Mabel. We have to really look at how that came about, right? See, the thing is, Charles doesn't go out searching for it. It comes to him. He's the one that's tempted. He's not looking for somebody to fool around with, right? The opportunity comes to him and he's going, I don't know, but so when he's talking to Sister Riley, that's an innocuous conversation, just talking to her, right? Because that's not the kind of man he is. But when somebody comes to you and says, and rubs your shoulder and rubs your back And you go, damn, I haven't had my back rubbed in a minute. Well, go a little deeper. Go a little stronger. Oh, wow. That's the kind of thing we're talking about, right? Okay.
So what would you say Charles was missing from his life that he was open to? Because at first wasn't like, no, he was open to it. So what was it that he was missing?
I think he's missing, again, I think he wouldn't be able to articulate this, but I think he realizes he hasn't been heard. He hasn't been seen, right? And so because of their circumstances, right? The financial circumstances, that begins to fracture the marriage and the relationship, right? And so when those things break down, there is no communication. However they communicate, there is none. And so when you have no communication, you have no intimacy, right? So then when there's no intimacy, there's no place for this man to be vulnerable. So he's missing all of those things. And so this woman comes in and fills that void and says, hey, I know you know how to dance. Hey, man, I like the way you fixed that fan. Oh, wow. When your wife used to say please and thank you and honey, oh, love, I love, you know what I mean? But she doesn't do that anymore. Why? Because of the circumstances. So, and I think it goes both ways. It's not just Charles, but I think we just deal with it differently. But that's what happens in marriages. That's what happens in relationships when the money gets funny and the bread don't smell right.
That I was wondering here was Charles is trying to keep the marriage together. He knows that Meech knows about the relationship. And he's also trying to rebuild with Lucille. So he has the straight married life that he's doing, but he's also having an affair. Can you talk about the duality of Charles and who is he really?
I mean, I think Charles is all those things. He's still the man he was. It's just what happens when you're in different circumstances. Do you know what I mean? And, I think he still wants to be married. Like I said, it's not him going out but the circumstances make him vulnerable. Do you know what I mean? Like when someone keeps you're gonna react. And you know what I mean? And so, but Charles is still a man who wants to be married, who loves his wife and things of that nature. So it'll just have to play out and see what, kind of see what happens. But Charles is still the man he was. I mean, I think that, we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because men and women, have moments of infidelity, but what's the causative? Do you know what I mean? I think everybody has to kind of like take responsibility and say, wow, okay, we saw that happen. We saw he cheated. Oh, he's no good. Okay, we got to that. Now let's ask ourselves why. Why do these things happen? Why do people fall out like tooth and gums because the money gets funny? Why is it that families and couples are having hard times communicating? What is it?
Right.
So
I want to talk a little bit about the finance that you touched upon. We do know that now the cab business is dissolved. Terry is completely out of the house. Where financially would you say the family seems to be much worse? What is Charles' mindset going forth? Is it to job or is it to just kind of rely on Lucille and finances bring?
I mean, I think as a man, he's going to wake up every day and go to work and do whatever he can to provide, regardless of how small or large those contributions may be. You know what I mean? And so, because that's what he knows, you know what I mean? He doesn't know not doing something, he doesn't know that. So, as a man, he's going to continue to figure out a way. And whether it be going back to factory job or doing some odd jobs and carpooling, whatever it is, he'll find a way to do it and he'll bring something home.
When Charles went to Meech. When Charles went to Meech and found out about the affair, and there was kind of a breath of, I don't want to say fresh air, but it looked like a little bit of relief, but still a little bit of guilt. That conversation that was had, was that to give permission Mabel, or do you feel that was to relieve his guilt by having Meech kind of accept what was going on?
I'm sorry, I missed that. I missed the first part of that question when you said something about Mabel. When you mentioned Mabel,
Yes, when he found out that he was essentially having an affair when he was at the strip club, and that conversation that you had later on, we was like, "Hey, I would have done the same thing too." I'm surprised it took you so long.
right.
Was that a relief to Charles? Was that a kind of given permission for what happened with Mabel to not say continue, but for that moment, it's okay. I understand you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all those things. But I also think that I almost think that it's a son almost apologizing to his father in a way of like almost saying like, yeah, you know, like, Dad, this is we're men. This is manhood shit, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not judging you, bro. Like, and I see now me out here now having to do what I have to do in these streets as a man now. I realize now that it's real out here. And it's real where you are, it's real. So, hey man, I'm not gonna judge you, Pop, because I'm realizing I'm not a boy anymore, I'm a man. And men are faced with different challenges that we have to face. And it's the kind of those things that only a man who's gone into the fire or gone into the lion's den, if you will, would understand certain decisions and certain things that men do to say, hey, bro, I ain't gonna judge you at all. And I think that's what it is. It's almost like him just saying, I understand, because this is life now.
Right. So when I spoke to Christine Horn, who is someone who will not, once she seeks her claws into someone, she doesn't let them go easily. So I wanted to know from Charles' standpoint, is he willing to fight no matter what it may take to save and keep his marriage?
You know, it really depends, I think, that what that fight looks like and what that fight entails. Do you know what I mean? It's and again, we're talking about the 80s and the 90s when we didn't do therapy, we didn't have the tools, things of that nature. So it's almost like one of those things where what does talking it out even look like and sound like? You know, a lot of times what men used to come and do is just say, hey, baby, I'm sorry, and expect a woman to forgive them. And sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't, most times they did. You know, we're probably going to give Lucille more agency, and also we know what really happened, you know, but it's also going to be on Lucille too. It's not just Charles, you know what I mean? It's like, does she want the brother back or not? You know what I mean? Does she feel like, hey, you know what? Actually, I'm done loving you. So it's not just on Charles. It's not like he has the say so of like what happens. It's like there's two people in this equation.
With speaking about Lucille almost died this season by Lamar's hands. And so their family, you know, they're in turmoil, but the brothers are bringing literal death at their door. Where does Charles kind of come into at this moment? We're being the protector. Do you see him stepping up and really trying to not confront, but being more of that protector role for Lucille in case this happens again? She doesn't feel being alone.
You know, it's hard because you ask yourself, what does that look like? Do you know what I mean? You're dealing with street people, and oftentimes they don't have a conscience, you know, and you know, short of going to get a gun to do something, you know, it's what does that look like? The most he can do is go to his brothers and say, hey, man, his boys, and be like, yo, you need to shut this shit down. You know what I mean? And they'll say, hey, Pops, we're trying, but it may or may not work. But, you know, he wants to be a protector. But again, when you're dealing with this new element, we don't know what that looks like. It's not the old school way of like, I got a bat and, you know, hey, get away from me. You know what I mean? Get away from my door. This is a different element that he's not used to dealing with. And that he might be scared.
Talk about Charles' faith, because, you know, he was in the church, and then we see him now slowly stepping away from it, not going to the church retreat or going to church service. Where is his faith at this moment? Does it exist?
I think he's in crisis. You know what I mean? I think that he's questioning. I would imagine he's questioning his faith. You know, because again, you know, you feel like you've had faith and you feel like you've worked towards, you know, being blessed. You know what I mean? And then seemingly that you have not. And I would say that he's questioning the righteousness of God. And so I think his faith is definitely in question.
What makes Charles happy, and can he ever there again?
You know, I think what would make him happy is having his family intact. I think what would make him happy is making enough money at his job to provide for his family. I think what would make him happy is normalcy. Do you know what I mean? I think that Charles is of a different time, so he wants just a simple life. And so he doesn't want money so he can go far. He wants money so he can provide. You know what I mean? I mean, it's basically simple.
Do you feel that his ego could be blocking his transformation to becoming a better person for himself?
I mean, I think yes and no. You know what I mean? It's like we all have an ego, and then we say, get out of the way, but you're saying yourself, you know, what put me in this position? Do you know what I mean? And so, I mean, it's quite possible that his ego is causing that, but I think at some point you kind of question, like I said, he questions God. He questions, like, you know, why have thou forsaken me? What do you know what I mean? So I wouldn't say like ego necessarily. I would just kind of say like he's looking for a change, something to change, you know, and yeah, I mean, I think we try to get a little bit too sophisticated with a lot of these things that we're dealing with these people at this time. He just wants his life to be back and be simple, and I think the simplicity of I just need a job that can help my family. It's really that simple, and the things get and so all this upheaval happens because a man who wants to work hard can't properly provide for his family. And I think that's what pains him most.
And is there anything that you can tease for Charles in his journey, whether or not that what salvation would look like if we see it this season?
No, I mean, I just think I think it's just best just to tune in and watch. I mean, he's taking that road, but he's on the journey, you know, and so there is no destination. It's just a journey.
Thank you so much for speaking with me. Wonderful portrayal. I love your acting and everything that you've done. So thank you.
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate it.